The camera shook without stopping as Flight Lieutenant Adrian Warburton's special Spitfire flew through the clouds, 25,000 feet above the Mediterranean Sea. The date was March 18th, 1943. His mission was very clear. Take pictures of the German ships moving through the Strait of Sicily, then fly back to Malta. Don't fight anyone, don't try to be a hero, just take photos. The military leaders needed these pictures badly. The Allied commanders were getting ready for a huge attack, and they needed to know exactly what the Germans were sending to North Africa. Warburton's Spitfire PR Mark IV was made especially for this job. They took off the armor and most of the weapons to make it faster and able to fly farther. The plane only had 2.303 Browning machine guns, barely enough to protect himself, and 8 special cameras attached to the body and wings. Photo pilots had very strict rules to follow. They were too important to fight in battles. Their special planes were too hard to replace if lost in dogfights. The information they collected was too valuable to risk in air battles. Spot your target, snap the photos, and race home. That was the assignment. But when Warburton dropped down to 20,000 feet to get good pictures of the ships below, he saw something that made everything different. 12 Messerschmitt Bf 10-9s were climbing fast toward him. Their unique shapes were easy to recognize against the bright blue Mediterranean sky. They had been guarding the ships and now they spotted him. Even worse, they were moving between Warburton and Malta, between him and safety. The normal rule was easy. Escape. The Spitfire PR Mark IV was quicker than almost any plane in the air. Without armor and extra guns, it could fly faster than most enemy fighters, especially way up high. Warburton could push the speed lever forward, go even higher, and leave the Messerschmitts far behind. But running away meant giving up on the mission. Without these pictures, the German ships would get through without anyone knowing. Allied intelligence wouldn't learn about German supply shipments. The big attack plans would be ruined, and someone else would have to try this mission again, probably with the same outcome. German fighters making the pilot turn back. Warburton looked at the battle situation in just seconds. 12 Bf 10-9s, skilled German pilots, based on how well they were flying together. His Spitfire only had 2 guns with not much ammunition, maybe 600 bullets total. Fighting a dozen enemy planes seemed like it would get him killed. But Warburton had one huge advantage the Germans didn't realize. They thought they were chasing a helpless spy plane flown by a pilot who only cared about staying alive. They expected him to run away. They were getting ready for an easy chase, not a real fight. Before I go on, I'd love to know where you're watching from. And have you ever heard of Adrian Warburton, one of the most honored spy pilots of World War II? Leave a comment below and tell me what you think about pilots who ignore their orders. Adrian Warburton wasn't your typical British pilot. At 24 years old, he already had a reputation as the most aggressive spy pilot in the Mediterranean area. He'd flown more than 300 spy missions, been shot down twice, crash-landed 4 times, and always came back. Other pilots said he was too risky. His bosses said he was extremely valuable. The Germans offered $5,000 to anyone who could capture him, the biggest reward for any spy pilot in that area. What made Warburton dangerous wasn't just how well he could fly, it was how he completely ignored the normal rules when the situation needed something different. He'd been taken to military court once for attacking German targets without permission during what was supposed to be a simple photo mission. He'd been banned from flying twice for not following orders, and he'd been promoted 3 times for amazing results that no other pilot could match. His Spitfire might have been built for spying, but Warburton demanded to keep those 2 machine guns. Most spy pilots took off all weapons to make the plane lighter. Warburton argued that 2 guns were better than 0, even if it made him 50 pounds heavier and a little slower. His squadron leader reluctantly said yes, probably knowing Warburton would somehow find a way to use them. Now, watching 12 Messerschmitts climb toward him, Warburton made a decision that would have seemed crazy to any other pilot. The Bf-10-9s were spreading apart, making a line to block his escape routes. They felt confident, too confident. They thought this would be an easy victory. Warburton turned off the safety on his 2 guns and flipped the Spitfire upside down. The dive completely shocked the Germans. Spy pilots didn't attack, they ran away. That was the rule. But Warburton came screaming down at over 450 miles per hour, diving right into the middle of the German group. The first Bf-109 never saw him coming. Warburton started shooting at 300 yards. A far shot, but his aim was perfect. Bullets walked across the Messerschmitt's glass cover and engine. Metal pieces tore off. White smoke poured from the engine. The Bf-109 rolled onto its back and fell away, on fire. 1 destroyed, 11 left. The group scattered in confusion. German pilots broke in every direction, trying to understand what just happened. In that moment of chaos, Warburton pulled up hard, losing speed in a straight climb that brought him above the group again. He'd learned this move from studying German fighter tactics. The Bf-109 was faster diving down and had bigger weapons, but the Spitfire could turn sharper and climbed slightly better way up high. Warburton wasn't trying to dogfight 12 planes at the same time. He was using better position and surprise to fight them one at a time. A second Bf-109 climbed after him. The pilot was probably furious after watching his partner get shot down by a spy plane. Bad choice. The German pilot was focused on revenge, not smart flying. Warburton let him get close to 200 yards, then quickly rolled right and pulled the Spitfire into a climbing spin. The Messerschmitt tried to follow but couldn't turn as tight. Warburton reversed direction, dropping behind the German fighter. 1 quick burst, ammunition was valuable, and the Bf-109's tail section fell apart. The plane tumbled out of control, the pilot jumping out seconds later. 2 destroyed, 10 left. The other Germans were reorganizing now, their first shock fading. They were professional pilots, and they were angry. Warburton heard radio talking in German. They were planning an attack together. He didn't speak German, but he understood the tone. They were going to swarm him. This was the critical moment. Against 10 fighters working as a team, even the best pilot couldn't survive long. Warburton needed to break their teamwork again, force them back into single fights where surprise and position mattered more than numbers. He spotted 2 Bf-109s climbing on his left, trying to get higher. Instead of running, he turned toward them. The unexpected attack messed up their timing. They expected him to dodge, not attack. Warburton fired a long burst at the lead plane, longer than he should have, using up precious bullets, but the result was worth it. The Bf-109 exploded in a brilliant fireball when bullets hit its fuel tank. 3 destroyed, 9 left. The wingman turned hard right, diving away. Warburton didn't chase. Chasing was how you got killed when outnumbered. Stay fast, stay high, control the fight. But now his ammunition was running dangerously low. He had maybe 150 bullets left against 9 fighters. That meant each burst had to count absolutely. 4 more Bf-109s were climbing from below, working as a team. Smart pilots. They were trying to force Warburton to watch threats above and below at the same time. The classic pincer move. Against a normal fighter with full ammunition, it wouldn't work. Against a spy plane that should have been running, it should have been devastating. Warburton calculated angles and speeds in his head. The lower group would reach shooting position first. He had maybe 10 seconds. He pushed the nose down, diving toward the lower group at maximum speed. The Germans expected him to pull up and dodge. He didn't. At 400 yards, he opened fire on the lead Bf-109, Short burst, pure angle shooting. The Messerschmitt's engine exploded, and the plane snap-rolled left, crashing into its partner. Both planes fell from the sky in a twisted mess of metal. 5 destroyed, 7 left. But Warburton's attack run had made him too slow. The higher group of Bf-10-9s was diving on him now, and he was too slow to outrun them. He could hear the rattle of their 20mm cannons starting to shoot. Bullets streaked past. Something hit his left wing with a sharp crack, probably 7.9 2mm machine gun fire, but nothing important broke. He yanked the Spitfire into a violent spiral, pulling forces that grayed his vision. The Bf-19s flew past him, their higher speed working against them. Warburton reversed direction, climbing again, gaining back the height he'd lost. A single Messerschmitt pilot stayed with him, matching his climb. Good pilot, persistent, dangerous. Warburton watched him in his mirror, calculating. The German was gaining slowly, his Bf-109's engine giving him just enough extra power to close the gap. At 100 yards, the Germans started shooting. Cannon shells punched holes through Warburton's tail section. His plane shook. Warning lights flickered, but he held steady, waiting. 50 yards. The German was confident now. Easy kill. Warburton cut the engine completely and deployed his flaps. The Spitfire slowed down violently. The Bf-109 shot past him like it had been launched from a slingshot, the German pilot surprised by the sudden change. For 2 seconds, Warburton had a perfect straight shot. He fired his remaining ammunition, everything left in one long burst. The Messerschmitt came apart under the continuous fire, wings folded, body broke. The pilot never got out, 6 destroyed, 6 left, and Warburton's guns were empty. The remaining 6 Bf-10-9s regrouped, circling below him. They'd realized what happened. No return fire. The spy plane was out of ammunition. Now it was just a matter of time. They spread out, preparing for a team attack that Warburton couldn't defend against. But he wasn't helpless, not completely. Warburton still had speed, height, and the most important weapon any pilot has, awareness of the situation and smart thinking. He also had something the Germans didn't know about. His cameras were still recording, and he just remembered something from his briefing. The ships below were approaching an area where British submarines were patrolling. If Warburton could lead the Bf-109s low enough, close enough to the ships, the German fighters would have to worry about their own anti-aircraft fire. The ship gunners were trigger happy. Warburton had read reports of German fighters being shot at by their own ships when combat got too close. It was a gamble, but so was everything else about this mission. He rolled upside down and dove straight toward the ships at maximum speed. The altimeter spun rapidly. 20,000 feet, 15,000, 10,000. The Bf-10-9s followed, sensing an easy kill. They were closing in, getting ready to shoot. At 5,000 feet, Warburton leveled off, flying straight toward the ships at wave-top height. The German ships spotted the incoming planes and did exactly what he hoped. They opened fire without asking questions. The sky filled with explosions. Black bursts of 88mm shells exploded around the diving Messerschmitts. Lighter 20mm bullets filled the air in deadly streams. The German fighters scattered, breaking off their attack to avoid their own anti-aircraft fire. Warburton threaded through the explosions, flying between the ships at 300 feet, insane, suicidal. But the ship gunners were tracking the higher Bf-109s, not the single low-flying plane. He cleared the ships and turned hard left, skimming the waves. Behind him, the explosion barrage continued. He watched in his mirror as one Bf-109 flew straight into a burst of 88mm fire. The plane disintegrated. Another was hit by 20mm fire, smoking badly, limping away from the fight. 7 destroyed, 4 left. The remaining 4 Messerschmitts had had enough. They'd lost more than half their group to a single spy plane. Their fuel was getting low after the long combat, and their target was still alive, still flying, heading home. They broke off the fight, turning back towards Sicily. Warburton kept the Spitfire low, hugging the waves until he was certain they weren't following. Then he climbed slowly, nursing the damaged plane back toward Malta. The left wing had multiple holes. The tail section was shredded. Oil pressure was dropping slowly, but the engine was still running and the controls still worked. And critically, the cameras were undamaged. They'd been recording the entire fight. When Warburton landed at Lucca airfield in Malta, his Spitfire looked like it had flown through a shredder. Ground crews counted 47 bullet and cannon holes. The intelligence officer demanded to know why he'd returned, with combat damage from a spy mission. Warburton's answer was simple. Ran into some Messerschmitts. They objected to being photographed. When the camera film was developed, intelligence officers couldn't believe what they were seeing. The photographs showed the ships in perfect detail, exactly what they'd asked for, but they also showed the fight. The gun camera footage, recorded automatically whenever Warburton fired, documented 6 confirmed kills. The mission cameras, running throughout the flight, captured 2 more Bf-10-9s colliding after Warburton's attack and another being destroyed by friendly explosions. 9 confirmed kills, 2 probables from planes damaged and fleeing, plus the complete spy photographs of the ships that had started the whole mission. The intelligence value alone was enormous, but the psychological impact was even greater. Warburton had fought 12 German fighters and survived. He'd shot down 6 personally, caused 2 more to collide, and led another into friendly fire. He'd completed his photography mission despite the fight, and he brought back the damaged plane and gun camera footage, proving every claim. The story spread through both Allied and German air forces. German pilots started treating British spy Spitfires with much more respect. They couldn't know which unarmed photoplane might actually be carrying guns and piloted by someone crazy enough to use them. The British had a different problem. Warburton had directly disobeyed orders again. He'd fought when explicitly told not to. He'd risked a valuable plane and an irreplaceable pilot. By every rule, he deserved punishment. Instead, they gave him the Distinguished Service Order. His award praised extraordinary courage and exceptional skill in air combat while completing a vital spy mission under extreme circumstances. The award didn't mention that he'd broken orders. It didn't need to. Everyone understood that sometimes the person in the cockpit sees the situation more clearly than the commander reading papers on the ground. Warburton had assessed the battle situation, recognized that completing the mission required fighting the enemy, and executed perfectly. Military historians later studied Warburton's fight as a perfect example of economy of force. He destroyed or disabled 9 enemy planes while using less than 600 bullets. That's roughly 65 bullets per kill. Most fighter pilots in World War II used thousands of bullets per victory. Warburton's success came from several factors. First, surprise, the Germans expected a spy plane to run, not fight. That surprise gave him the first kill advantage. Second, tactics. He fought vertically, using height and energy management instead of trying to outturn the Bf-109s. Third, ammunition discipline. With limited bullets, every burst had to be precisely aimed. Fourth, tactical thinking. When ammunition ran out, he used terrain and enemy defenses to continue weakening enemy capability. But perhaps most importantly, Warburton understood his real mission. He wasn't ordered to take photographs and avoid combat. He was ordered to gather intelligence to support Allied operations. Fighting the fighters wasn't breaking that mission. It was enabling the mission. A dead pilot brings back no photographs. The ship photographs Warburton delivered revealed that Germany was shipping Tiger tanks to Tunisia. Allied command immediately adjusted their battle planning. When the big attack launched 2 weeks later, Allied forces were prepared for the heavy armour. The intelligence Warburton gathered, while simultaneously destroying nearly a squadron's worth of German fighters, directly helped Allied victory in the North African campaign. Warburton continued flying spy missions throughout 1943 and early 1944. He eventually collected more awards than almost any other British pilot of the war. The Distinguished Service Order with 2 bars, the Distinguished Flying Cross with bar, and the American Distinguished Flying Cross. His confirmed kill count reached 22 planes, making him one of the few spy pilots to become an ace. On April 12, 1944, Warburton took off on a spy mission over Germany. He never came back. His Spitfire disappeared somewhere over Bavaria. No wreckage was ever found. No grave was ever confirmed. The Germans never reported shooting him down. He simply vanished. Decades later, researchers discovered that Warburton had been secretly working with British intelligence, conducting spy missions disguised as photo flights. His final mission may have involved far more than photography. The truth remains secret. What isn't secret is what Warburton proved on that March day over the Mediterranean. Spy pilots weren't just passive watchers. When circumstances demanded it, when the battle situation required fighting, they could fight with devastating effectiveness. The military learned from pilots like Warburton that strictly following mission rules sometimes conflicts with mission success. A spy pilot who photographs a target but dies in the process delivers no intelligence. A pilot who survives by fighting threats and then completes the photography mission delivers intelligence and removes enemy assets at the same time. Modern military training now explicitly includes this concept. Spy forces are trained not just to observe and report, but to defend themselves aggressively when required. The phrase economy of force in military planning directly traces back to fights like Warburton's, achieving maximum effect with minimum resources. Warburton's willingness to break orders when the situation demanded it embodied what military thinkers call mission command, understanding the purpose behind orders and adapting execution to circumstances. His commanders didn't tell him to fight 12 fighters, but they did tell him to gather intelligence and return safely. Warburton understood that in this case, those goals required fighting. The Germans who encountered him that day probably never understood what happened. They intercepted a spy plane and lost 9 planes. By all logic, that should have been impossible. But Warburton didn't fight by their logic. He fought with surprise, skill, and complete commitment to mission success. The next time someone tells you to just observe and not engage, remember Adrian Warburton circling over that convoy. He understood that sometimes accomplishing your mission requires breaking your orders. Sometimes survival requires aggression. Sometimes the best defense is a devastating attack. He was ordered to take photos. He ended the mission with 12 enemy kills instead, and in doing so, he proved that the most dangerous weapon any spy pilot carries isn't cameras or guns. It's the judgment to know when to use each and the courage to act on that knowledge, even when everyone expects you to run. If you want to learn more amazing stories like this, make sure to check out more videos.